Alright, tonight we're going to make some mac and cheese. This will just be the stovetop version, but I will just pause here and say that you can also make this into a casserole. One my mom makes that's really good is you put stewed tomatoes, like canned stewed tomatoes, in the bottom of the casserole with the finished product of this, and you bake it for about 45 minutes in the oven at about 350 degrees. And it comes out like mac and cheese with whatever casserole stuff you added to it. That's really good as well. But tonight we're just doing the stovetop version of that because I actually like the consistency of that a little better. It's much more creamy and cheesy and less like a casserole. Anyway, let's get started. To make macaroni and cheese, all we really need is some butter, some cheddar cheese, or your cheese of preference, and a little bit of flour. Let me grab the flour, or cornstarch, and let's see, a pan to boil our pasta in, and a pan to make our cheese sauce in. Also some milk. I don't drink milk. I usually just use half and half in my coffee, so I use half and half when I make this. You can also use cream, and it makes it a little thicker and creamier, more toward the lines of an Alfredo sauce. And of course you can use Parmesan, Asiago, whatever kind of other flavored cheese you want to flavor it to your liking. But I'm just going to work with cheddar because that's my favorite. Okay, the pan is heating up, and basically you can scale this depending on how big a batch you want to make, but you basically just need enough butter to make your roux with. So you start with butter in the pan and you melt it down. Alright, we're just about there. And so then we're just going to take a little bit of flour. Doesn't need to be a whole lot. We're just adding a thickening agent basically to the butter. And then we stir that in good. We'll actually let that come up to a little bit of a simmer. The idea is we're kind of caramelizing the starch with the butter and the milk fats. We're kind of making a base that milk and cheese will want to blend together and melt together smoothly, and that's kind of the idea here. Kind of like when we made the roux before for the stew. We did that to thicken the stew, and we kind of took advantage of the starches in the potatoes and the fats in the stew and the butter blending together. In this case, we're doing that to make a cheese sauce. Okay, so that's kind of what you want to get to, about like that. Now, you don't want that too hot, because you don't want to curdle your milk when you go to pour your milk in, because if you curdle your milk, you mess up the whole batch. So we come off of the heat for a minute, and remember you want to do this with a relatively low heat. I'll just show you on this stove here. We're sitting at 3 right now. I probably will go up to 4 once I get the half and half in it, and I want to start warming that batch up. And then real quick, like, I'm going to chop up some cheese, because you want to make it into little fine pieces so it'll melt easier. So that's kind of where we're headed here. Alright, let me put this back on the heat, and we will add some half and half to that. Now, I'm making a relatively small batch tonight because I'm just making one serving, because I don't want to eat mac and cheese for the next 3-4 days. So we're just going to add a little bit of milk. Alright, and then we kind of want to, we're slowly warming the milk, and we're blending the milk and the butter together. You can see how that milk is cold right now. Ideally you would add the milk slowly, but I find you can get away with doing it this way. But you can see that the butter is kind of coagulating and clumping a little bit, and that's an indicator that it's still cool. Alright, so I'm going to dial this heat down even a little bit more. and we'll just let that creep up in temperature while I cut up some cheese. Okay, so while I'm chopping this cheese up, I am keeping this stirred up on the side as well, because you want to make sure you don't burn anything. And I'm a huge cheddar fan. I'm using some Cabot, seriously sharp cheddar. Oh, I love a good cheddar. And I'm going to use about this much. That's plenty for what I'm making tonight. And I'm just going to make, you know, macaroni up to like here when the pot's finished, and that'll be it. So it doesn't take a whole lot of cheese. You could go less or more depending on your preference. When I make a big batch, I usually go a little heavier on it, but you know, to each their own. Okay, like I said, I chop it up pretty fine so it blends easily. I always have a snack of it. And at this point, our you can see our butter is more like a finer dispersion when it settles out in the milk. So our temperature's coming up. You can actually touch it with your finger. You can feel it starting to get a little bit warm. That's a good indicator if it's time to start adding cheese. Cheese you want to add slowly and stir in. So, pardon my camera work, but I'll take about maybe a quarter of the first part of that, and we'll add it in. And then we'll bring the heat back up a little bit here. You don't want to go too hot, like I said, you want to avoid burning. But now that I can divert my attention to this more for stirring, I can afford to add a little extra heat to it. And so slowly you'll see the cubes of cheese starting to melt in. And you just keep stirring. And I won't make you watch the whole process. We'll come back to another clip in a moment. Okay, it's only been like about a minute or so. And you can see that cheese starting to melt over a little bit, like that. So that means you can start adding some more cheese. Basically, you're kind of using the cheese as sort of a heat sink to melt the cheese into the, well, the roux and the milk, or half and half, or whatever you're using. Basically, to meld those together, combining their fats and their milk fats and their oils and all that kind of stuff. And the cold cheese kind of helps just, you know, keep the temperature down so you don't burn the batch. So that's why, one of the reasons why you add slowly. The other reason is because it's much easier to blend it together this way. Alright, we'll check back with you in a minute. Oh, continuously stirring when you're doing this, by the way. Okay, it's only been about another minute or so, maybe even a little less. Try and get out of my own light here. You can see that's starting to thicken. That actually probably doesn't need much more cheese, but I'm going to throw the rest of that block in because I want to get greedy on the cheddar tonight, because I love cheddar cheese. Yeah, you could even add a little bit more half and half to that to help thin it if you wanted. The other thing you can do with this is you can take it thick like this, or even thicker than this, and you can make a really nice cheese sauce for over like a steamed broccoli or cauliflower, or, well, I mean, a cheese sauce is great over anything, so put it over whatever you like. But those are two tasty ones I like that are pretty healthy. And this is actually a hair thick, so I think I am going to add some half and half. Just the tiniest little dash, just to help keep this as a nice uniform cheese sauce mix to go with the macaronis we're going to make in a bit. Alright, and so you can still see some very small little clumps of cheese sauce in there, or clumps of cheese in there. find is now that once we, well, we'll get a little warmer. The half and half took the temperature down a bit. But usually as you start to reach that point where there's just a few little clumps like this left, if you shut the heat off at that point and kind of let it sit a minute or two and then give it another stir, that's about where you want to be. That'll keep you well away from scalding it and messing up the batch and curdling the cheese in the milk rather than saucing it. But there you go, that's a pretty smooth, extra sharp cheddar cheese sauce. And I don't know, what was that, maybe 10 minutes to make that? And you can do it quicker if you're not trying to run a camera. Alright, I'm going to make some pasta and then we'll put this over it. And I'm going to kill the heat under this. And probably stir it another minute or so while the burner temperature drops a bit. And then I'll make up some pasta and I'll have some macaroni and cheese and you can go make your own. Go, Ian, go. Look at that. 4 boxes of honey on top of the skateboards and 2 new fresh frame boxes in for the bees to fill. Escape out of the top and fill in the bottom.
45 minutes.
Keep it up, Ian. Nice work.
And a little bit of...
So we got boiling water now. We got cheese sauce. And yeah, I'm watching Ian Stepler, a Canadian beekeeper's blog in the background. But for those of you who don't know how to make pasta, that's how you make pasta. Okay, box says 10 minutes, well 10 to 12. It's been just about 10. I'm going to drain this and then we'll put some butter, a little bit of rosemary, and some smoked paprika and a touch of cayenne pepper in there for flavor. Okay, got a little more butter, some fresh rosemary I just clipped off the bushes outside, a little bit of cayenne pepper, and some smoked paprika. I like to do this while this is still nice and hot. That way we can add the butter to it and we kind of mix that in. And kind of let it come off the fork. There we go. And I'll trim the rosemary right over that and then we'll let that sit for a few minutes there so that rosemary can kind of infuse. And then we'll mix that in along with the other spices. Okay. Rosemary, dash of cayenne. I'm going to put a little bit of turmeric in this as well. Okay, turmeric, smoked paprika, butter, rosemary, and actually you can add garlic or some sauteed onion or whatever other flavors you want to add to it. You can spruce it up. It's good just plain too, just butter and cheese sauce is good just like that. But I like to add some herbs to my cooking and a little spice and flavor and some extra medicinal value to the food. Okay, so that's all stirred up. It's still pretty hot. So some final notes on that. Ordinarily, the cheese sauce cooled is just fine, and you can mix it with the pasta. You would want to cool the pasta a little bit before you do that. Now, if you rinse your pasta with cold water, I'm not a rinsing person, but some people do rinse their pasta. If you rinse it with cold water first, that'll help cool it. And then you want to let it dry well, not dry out to the air, but dry the main moisture off it, because you don't want the water to mess up that emulsification. And then you add a little bit of butter to the pasta and blend that in. That helps make it connect with this cheese sauce and the roux that we made before much easier. I find it blends a little better when you don't rinse it, and if you don't rinse it and your cheese sauce is a little bit cool like mine is, you can kind of take this when it's still pretty hot, but not too hot, because again, we don't want to curdle our cheese. This has probably cooled enough for me to mix this in, so I'll go ahead and mix this in, and that'll be that. Gradually mix some. I'm just going to bulk mix the rest in. Alright, there we go. Macaroni and cheese, homemade, stovetop, quality ingredients with some quality spices and a little extra flavor add. This is going to be delicious. I'm going to go eat this, and then I got to get to bed so I can get up for work in the morning. Yay. Let's see. What else I was going to say? Oh, so you could also take this, like I mentioned before, put it into a casserole dish. You could add whatever you wanted to that to make a nice casserole with it. You could add, green pepper or tomato or even beef or barbecued chicken or whatever crazy thing you wanted to add to make a really awesome macaroni and cheese casserole. So maybe one of these times we'll do that too. In the meantime, this is how you make stovetop macaroni and cheese the proper way. I will show you a quick and dirty technique in an upcoming video. I found a shortcut for doing this, but I wanted to take you through the full process. Alright, that's it for now. I'm going to go eat dinner. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network. Hope you found this interesting or informative. Remember, keep your friends close and your farmers closer.